start meeting. Share better. Please enter your access code followed. Welcome to the Prince Edward County Conference Line. Please stand by. You'll be joined in shortly.
You need to get to Liz. Anyways. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to the Prince Edward County Planning Commission meeting for March 14th, 2022. I'm Jack Peary. I'm filling in for Chairman Pringerman tonight, so I will try to do a good job and move the meeting along as best we can. So he's big shoes to fill with Chairman Pringerman. Before we start the meeting, I need to read this statement. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, the Prince Edward County Planning Commission is operating pursuant to and in compliance with its Emergency Continuity of Operations Ordinance. Effective August 1st, 2021, the board has reopened meetings to in-person participation by the public. However, there could still be limited available seating. Citizens are strongly encouraged to participate in meetings through in-person participation, written comments, and/or remote participation by calling 1-844-890-7777, access code 390313. If busy, please call again. Additionally, citizens may view the board meeting live in its entirety at the county's YouTube channel, the link to which is provided on the county's website. Public participation and public hearing comments for Planning Commission meetings will be subject to the Citizen Guide for providing input during public participation and public hearings for Prince Edward County government meetings, effective August 1st, 2021. I will now call the meeting to order for the March 14, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. We have Mr. Jones on the phone. Bobby, can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir. Hear you fine.
Oh, great. We can hear you fine too.
Good.
First order of business, we need approval of the minutes. I hope everyone has a chance to look at the minutes and everything. And do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, raise the right hand. Bobby? Okay. Minutes so approved. We will now open the public hearing portion of the subdivision ordinance tonight. And we do have some speakers. And I'll let Mr. Love go over the subdivision ordinance amendment again, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, our public hearing tonight is to consider an ordinance amendment to the subdivision ordinance. There's been some discussion and calls recently in the last couple of days about this. I think some confusion. What this this ordinance amendment will do, it will do a couple of things. It would provide an exemption from the current language of our subdivision ordinance, which I do want to read. Our current subdivision ordinance reads that all plats before being submitted shall first be approved by the resident highway engineer and the local health official. Now, this is a plat of survey for a new lot that would come off of a larger tract. So, and in Prince Edward County, a subdivision is defined by the creation of a new lot from its parent tract. So this is when a new lot is created. So the way it's written now, any new lot coming to my office, the county office, to be created and given a new tax map number, whether it's bought or sold or gifted, would be perked. However, under the current amendment being considered, any tract of land that is 25 acres or more that is intended for agricultural or forestal use could be exempted from the perk. Other thing that this does is more clearly define what a family subdivision is and align that with state code. And also, there is a fee in the code currently of $175 for a plat review. The board does have a fee schedule that they adopt from time to time, so we've changed that language. So rather than have the monetary number of 175, it references a fee schedule as adopted by the board from time to time by resolution. So those are the three changes. Like I said, two of them are kind of housekeeping, the family subdivision clarification and aligning that with state code, and then also the 175 fee schedule. But again, what this would do, if approved, would provide an exemption for a farmer or forester, so they would not have to perk a new lot that's subdivided off of another tract of land. It does not affect anything currently platted, taxed, or on the books. You can buy and sell existing lots at will. You don't come through my office. You basically see an attorney and you have a deed created, and that gets recorded at the clerk's office. This is specifically for the subdivision of land in the creation of a new tract. I'll be glad to answer any questions the commission may have on this.
Any commissioners have any further questions or for Mr. Love about this?
So as I understand it, if it is a forestry, does not have to be perked, is that correct?
Currently, under the current ordinance, regardless of use, a new tract of land does. But if this was to pass and the board adopts this, whether if it's be agricultural or forestal, it could utilize this exemption to not have to have a perk on day one. The only time it would have to be perked would be if someone wanted to build a house.
Nice.
Now, I do want to note this was properly advertised in the March 2nd and March 9th editions of the Farmville Herald. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing part of the meeting, and we do have 3 people signed up, and the first one is Jesse Yates. Mr. Yates.
Thank y'all again for hearing me again. This is on the same matter. Mr. Love, if I had an option to buy 2 acres beside my existing lot off of another parcel, or 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, whatever, do I have to perk it?
If you're creating a standalone lot, the
It's
answer
a
is yes.
standalone lot, just protecting my lot.
If you're going to add it to your lot, then no, that's considered a boundary adjustment and would have a parcel hook. Your acreage would increase that acreage amount. So no, you would not perk that. This is only would affect a new standalone lot.
If I buy existing tract of land, joining mine, regardless of size, is this the same thing?
If you put a parcel hook on it and increase your acreage and don't have a standalone lot, then no, you would not have to perk it.
But it read different before.
Excuse me?
In other words, this is what we're proposing tonight.
It would allow the 25 acre or more to not be perked.
All right, but the 110 I perked was,
Yes,
Right.
but that 110 was not being added to your tract of land to increase the total acreage.
but it was.
It did not have that on the plat. It did not have a new parcel boundary with the parcel addition, the way it was presented from the surveyor. It was a standalone lot.
In other words, a standalone lot. The wording is very carefully on this, isn't it?
Excuse me, sir?
The only time I have to perk is when I'm gonna build a house. And all of this is on the books, correct?
The only time you have to perk is if you create a standalone new tract of land that's not being added to addition, acreage, adjoining acreage, or it's being, that's the only other way to get around the perk today, is if you're dissolving that acreage into your acreage and increasing the neighboring tract of land, has to touch that, of course. But that's one way, that's called a boundary adjustment.
Well, why can't we word it that way?
Because you've got, boundary adjustments are a different animal under, and treated differently under the Code of Virginia. Boundary adjustments are allowed. Subdivision is a different thing where you're creating a new standalone lot that's never been existed before. And it has to, right now, it has to be perked and has to have a VDOT look at it from an entrance standpoint. Those are the two criteria. But this does not, boundary adjustments do not have to be perked.
Now, why are we setting acreage on it then?
Because most localities have a minimum acreage to.
Most counties do, but why are we doing it? Why are we setting it at 25 acres? If we're gonna build on it, the first thing we have to do is get the state to put a zoning in for excess. Second thing we have to do is get a perk test.
The,
Mr. Chairman, okay, rather than getting into a question, let's let the speaker speak. I'll be glad to come up and address some of those questions as soon as the other speakers have had a chance to voice their concerns.
Okay.
I'm just still trying to verify why we can't just have, what we had was fine. Why we're doing it different now? And like I said, I bought land in the past and everything's worked out fine. I perked it, I built a house. If it don't perk, I can't build a house. And as far as needing acreage, a certain amount of acreage to do it, to justify something, I don't see where we need it. First thing we always have to do is perk. A second thing, if we can't perk, we can't build. So why can't we just go along with that instead of zoning in to 25 or 10 or 15 or whatever you want? What is necessary? That's what I'm asking. Can we just bring it back down to perking the land that we're trying to build on? Perk the site that we need to build on, instead of just perking anywhere. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Yates, appreciate it. Next speaker is Jimmy Garner.
I don't usually talk on.
Okay.
From the existing code, thank y'all for having me.
Jimmy, take your mask down.
They know what I look like. I just like to clarify what's written in the existing code. The term development shall not be construed to include any tract of land which will be principally devoted to agricultural production. So it looks like to me, we already have in the code to exempt farmland and farming of trees. That's why I was waiting to hear Doug or Rob explain that. Because if that's in there, that's all the protection we need. And I suggest we leave it like it is until we better understand what problems we're trying to face. I've bought land in different counties and never had to go through this. In Amelia County, Dinwiddie County, and Charlotte County. Never had, somewhere it's been less than 25 acres. So, just, if we can't get it right, let's don't do anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garner, appreciate it. Next speaker is Patrick Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Perry, members of the board. I'm Patrick Murphy. I'm a landowner in Prospect, also a beef cattle farmer and a proud tree farmer. Agricultural production seems to be at the root of one of the questions here. As you can see by the emblem on my shirt, I have been employed as the county forester here with the Virginia Department of Forestry for the last 22 years. Trees are a renewable resource. They run a longer rotation than corn. Corn runs roughly 120 to 140 days to maturity, and then we harvest them. Loblolly pine trees planted throughout the South runs roughly anywhere between 16 and 35 years to maturity, and then is harvested. Also duly noted, the United States Department of Agriculture, the biggest organization under the United States Department of Agriculture is the U.S. Forest Service. Forestry is alive and well in Prince Edward County. We harvest roughly 1,900 to 2,000 acres of trees per year here in Prince Edward County. Reforestation rate is 1,354 acres annually over the last 12 years. So that would prove to the point that it is a renewable resource, and agricultural production does include forestry as a whole. In reference to the subdivision ordinance, parcelization as opposed to subdivision, which I would argue the wording a little bit. I think even though it's in the code, I still think it's used incorrectly. Lawmakers are not guys with dirty boots and probably understand very little about land in general. Acreage less than 25 acres being perked. The number of tracts I work on in the course of the year ranges somewhere between 130 and 300 tracts per year. The number of tracts 25 acres or less is probably greater than 50%. Trees are grown on the vast number of these tracts, as well as agricultural production and parcelization of larger tracts under the size of 25 acres is extremely evident here in Prince Edward County. Taking the time and the expense to perk land less than 25 acres in size for tree production and or agricultural production is a waste of time and a waste of the taxpayers' dollars. These taxpayers are also the individuals that appoint you and that elect people to public office. Furthermore, the record keeping in the Commissioner of Revenue's office is the poorest that I have seen throughout Southside Virginia. I used to work research for the Department of Forestry. I worked in 21 different counties, worked with land offices all over the state, and bar none, Prince Edwards is the worst. As Mr. Love could attest, we had an issue with a piece of property that I have under contract. It was because of poor record keeping downstairs. If the ordinance is poor, by definition, under forestry, being under agricultural production, then that needs to be directed and attention needs to be placed on that prior to going forward with any type of ordinance. Furthermore, I am wholeheartedly against perking anything for agriculture or forestry production less than 25 acres in size due to the fact that you're placing more burden on the taxpayer than what they really need, because let's face it, trees don't go number 1 or number 2 in the woods. Thank you. I appreciate your vote against this.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, Mr. Love or Mr. Stanley, would you like to address some of the questions, please?
Yes, sir. Doug Stanley, County Administrator Couple things. Why do we require drainfield site approval? Why do we require a VDOT entrance on smaller lots? Reason is, those lots get sold. There's no guarantee, unless somebody puts a covenant across the property, a permanent easement, there's no guarantee that'll stay in that use. I've been in the local government business for 25+ years. I've seen 20-acre lots that did not perk. And people have to take 220s to be able to get a perk site with an alternative system to be able to develop. What we're trying to do is eventually protect the owner down the road to make sure that when they purchase that property, they be able to build on it. I've had lots of people, people coming into Board of Equalization hearings saying, my lot can't perk. This lot's worthless to me because of those very issues. Reference to, I'm going to have to politely disagree with our last speaker about ag and forest. I'm reading for the Code of Virginia, ag and forest districts. Agricultural products, definition of the Code of Virginia, crops, livestock products, including not limited to field crops, fruits, vegetables, horticultural specialties, cattle, sheep, hogs, goats, horses, poultry, fur-bearing animals, milk, eggs, and furs. And then there's the definition for forestal production. Production for commercial purposes of forestal products, including the processing and retail sales by the producer of forestal products which are produced on the parcel or in the district. Forestal products includes not limited to saw timber, pulpwood, posts, firewood, Christmas trees, and other tree and wood products for sale for farm use. This was put in the Code of Virginia in 1977 by a good friend of mine, Delegate Andy Guest. And the reason they put it in there is to protect folks in forestry and agriculture, to limit impact of growth and development around, to protect those uses. The ordinance right now, as Mr. Love stated, requires a plat. We agree it's impractical to require a farmer that wants to buy and create a separate parcel from having to go through the perking process since day one. We agree. So what we're trying to do is put an exemption in there. I think the exemption we started with last time was 50 acres. Now we've advertised it for 25. And I think there were some comments by Planning Commission members, are people going to really cut 5 or 10 acre lots for farmettes? And I think that's why the commission revised that number and stuck it at 25. So again, we are in agreement. We're trying to provide an exemption under the code. I think I'll let Robbie address the term development. We feel that's different. That's dealing with the site plan parameters of the zoning ordinance, and you have to take the whole thing in context. But we want to create an exemption. We want to create an exemption for those that want to get into forestry uses, to buy a piece of land, or for ag uses. And right now, the commission is saying the minimum acreage is 25 just to be exempt. You can do a 5-acre lot, but you can perk it because if you sell it later, at least the person buying it will know there's available perk site in which to build a house. All this, you start waiving all the requirements for a VDOT entrance and a perk site, that's when you run into bad driveways. People have to put mirrors up across the road because they can't see to get out. So what we're trying to do is put those safety standards in place so when these lots get sold and developed, they'll meet the standards, both for the highway department and for the health department. With that, Robbie, you want to talk about the development aspect a little bit?
Yes, what Mr. Garner read off was a definition of development. It is not an exemption to our ordinance. I want to be clear, our ordinance specifies under the platting standards, and I'll quote again, all plats before being submitted shall first be approved by a resident highway engineer and a local health official. So today, any new tract of land being created, whether it's 1.5, which is our minimum in the A1, all the way up to 1,000 acres. If you take if you take a 2,000 acre tract and split it into 2 pieces, and you make a brand new 1,000 acre tract, you would have to perk it. But if this exemption would pass, anything larger than 25 that's going to be for agricultural or forestal use would not have to perk. Today, anything gets perked. Everything gets perked. That's a brand new lot. Now again, you can buy and sell an existing tract of land every day, all day. You never come through me. You see a lawyer. This is specifically for the act of subdivision in the, when a new lot is created. That's all it affects. It does not affect any land that's already out there, that's already being taxed, that's already existing on the books. It only applies to subdivision.
Okay. Does anybody in the public would have a question or another comment you'd like to? Yes, sir, Mr. Murphy.
If you look at land use trends in Prince Edward County, if you look at land use prices in Prince Edward County, the tract sizes are getting smaller. The price per acre is getting larger due to influxes of people coming to the picturesque countryside. When we last drafted the county comprehensive plan, I sat on that committee. And furthermore, the biggest draw to Prince Edward County was the country-esque landscape. Many agriculturalists, like several that sit on your board, choose to buy parcels of land, whether they are adjacent, whether they are freestanding, quote unquote, may be subdivided, but because of the escalating cost of land, raw land, price per acre, whether in trees or open land, a large number of your tracts will be smaller than 24.99 acres. That being said, I would ask the commission to revisit the tract size and maybe reduce the tract sizes down to something that is a little more advantageous, I guess, to smaller landowners, and maybe reduce the tract size to have it perked under 5 acres or at 10 acres. There is a vast number of properties, as the realtors will tell you, as the books will tell you, in the Commissioner of Revenue's office, as the landowners will tell you, because I'm one of the very first phone calls they make, there is a large number of parcels being traded hands between 10 and 25 acres. Many of these are for agriculture and forestry production. Please revisit that. If you deem that you need to vote on it, I would ask that you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Anybody else in the public would like to say anything? Mr. Garner, Mr. Yates? And there's nobody on the phone, right? Okay. Just Bob? Okay. Well, then I'd like to close the public hearing part of the meeting. And now for the commissioners to discuss it among themselves, and if they have any questions or comments,
I
please.
think there's still some confusion that people are thinking if they buy a 20-acre parcel that is already deeded and has a tax map number, that they're gonna have it perked. But that's not the case. It's if you have a 100-acre parcel and you're selling less than 25 acres of that to somebody else. That's when it has to be perked. Not every parcel that's in existence already.
Anybody else have?
So is the,
So it seems to me our minimum lot size, a standalone lot is 4 acres for Prince Edward County. Why don't we make it, if we perk it, it's 4 acres? I know you can do an acre and a half, but it's got to average out to be 4 acres if you do a plot of land. But if we make it 4 acres, that would cover anybody that will potentially have a lot, go to hide.
Henry, did you have something to say?
I'm still thinking that, is the County Board of Supervisors questioning the definition of forestry and agriculture? Did they, from what I understood from talking to one supervisor, that they were having the county attorney look into it's an old ordinance or something, I say forestry is not part of the definition of agriculture since agriculture is exempt?
Ag and forestry would be exempt under this if it was passed.
But have the county board of supervisors have not passed it yet?
The county board of supervisors has asked you to consider.
Yeah, we have to make,
Okay.
recommend one way or the other to them.
The language of agriculture and forestry is in state code, is that right?
There are different, yes, sir, there are different definitions, that's right.
Jack, could we just go back to day one? What initially prompted this discussion? I know, Mr. Yates, you were trying to, purchase an additional 100 acres, or were you trying to go ahead and diverse yourself of, or reparcel 100 acres, is that correct?
My farm come off of a tract of 400 some acres.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a tract of 169, something like that. Another partial of it come up from the deed to buy again.
Mm-hmm.
I bought that joining the existing farm.
Mm-hmm.
I got a survey of it, I laid it up there on Mr. Love's desk, and he said he couldn't record it until I got a perk on it.
I
I
understand.
said, I'm planting only pine trees on it.
I understand that, okay.
But
But-
now he says we have to perk.
If that was a boundary readjustment, then he would not have to perk.
It is correct. It was not presented as a boundary adjustment.
Okay.
It was created as a subdivided, brand-new standalone lot.
So if he had does he have to have it resurveyed again? And stating, or a deed saying that it is
Well, he
boundary?
had, his issue's closed. He's had it perked, it's been recorded, it exists.
But
We're trying to
it has
fix,
to be recorded in the deed as boundary adjustment.
and it has to have notations on the plat and be notated as a boundary adjustment. You show what's coming off of the adjoining tract, and you put the acreage that's being added with the current acreage of your land, and then a new total. So let's just say you and I have 100 acres that are side by side. I buy 50 from you. I will not have a 50-acre tract and a 100-acre tract. I will have one 150-acre tract as a boundary adjustment. But that's not the way it was presented. It was surveyed as a standalone 100-acre tract of land, not to be dissolved into a larger or different tract of land. So that constituted a subdivision under that scenario.
As an example, if Mr. Yates wanted to buy 24 acres next to his existing property, if he wanted that to be a standalone tract, it would have to be perked.
Correct.
If he wanted to go ahead and make a boundary adjustment, it would not.
That's correct.
But what we're trying to decide now is if this amendment was in place, that the 25-acre exemption, he would not have had to have it perked, right?
That's correct.
Yes. So we're trying to help
That's correct.
for the future.
That's the same thing I'm trying to do, because I've already been caught with it.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it better for everybody, not just, not me, everybody here.
right.
So I guess really what we're talking about is the acres, because we started with 50 acres at the last meeting, and we decided maybe 25 would be better, but you're thinking, like, maybe what Bobby said, 4 or 5 acres would be better than the 25.
So the first thing I gotta do
Well,
is,
4 or 5 acres is a normal, well, in some ways, building lots around here. And some are acre and a half. I know over Ridge Road, they built 22 houses on acre and a half lots.
Yeah.
And they obviously have got one big lot somewhere, make it all average out to 4 acres.
That's correct.
Well, I think if we put it at 4, that would cover the person on a standalone lot. And, then that would have to be, work to make sure it's good.
Mr. Chairman, I want to add,
Like too, though, if you go buy a piece of land, if you don't make sure for yourself that it's first before you buy it, that's your fault.
Right.
to clarify, this is not solely for the purpose of buying and selling existing tracts of land. It would be for a new lot created. In counties across Virginia, their charge and duty has been to certify that a new lot is perkable. You'll find that in almost every county code, in fact, every county that touches us. In our research with Mr. Stanley and myself, we did see an average of an agricultural exemption of 50. But again, at your last meeting, you reduced that down to 25. I guess the question is, number one, you can't vote on anything less than 25 tonight.
Right.
Period. I want to make sure that's clear.
We'd have to
You
re-advertise.
have to re-advertise. But we did this last meeting. What is your consideration or ideal of a bona fide agricultural or forestal lot that doesn't exist today that will be cut off of a larger tract? A new standalone lot. Everybody has a larger standard than what your normal building lot is. You don't align those because they're different. They're different uses. A building lot obviously is going to be built, they all get perked. And this would only affect something that's not going to be built on.
And the boundary adjustment, we'll go ahead and resolve that.
A boundary adjustment does resolve that, yes. Again, I have seen one plat since May of 2020 that got caught up in this, and that's Mr. Yates' plat, in my time. This is not a widespread problem that we hate, but this is trying to fix that, so a landowner who does want to farm or forest or a tract of land and buy it as a standalone lot, they may not join a tract, they may just want to buy a piece of somebody's farm, that they would be able to do that without having the added expense of a perk, which I agree. If you're going to do ag and forestal land, it's no need to do that. Currently, you have no exemption. Everything gets perked if it's a new lot.
So I know last month when we were talking about reducing the acreage from 50 to 25, a couple of the commissioners stated that they didn't think, anything under 25 would make sense for somebody to use for timber at least. And that's kind of where we came up with that 25. I don't know what is feasible. Should it be reduced, or is 25 a feasible acreage?
That's the question we have with,
Well, again, this is adding an exemption if you voted for it. I'm not telling you which way to go. We have no exemption currently, and I've only had one plat in almost 2 years that got caught up in this. But that was a 100-acre tract of land. If we set the standard at 25, then anything 25 or more wouldn't have to get
It's
perked.
exempt, right.
And that would be a threshold to trigger the exemption. But it's, cool. Obviously it's y'all's call. What's y'all's thoughts on that?
what would be the consequences if we reduce it, say, to 5 acres?
We'd have to re-advertise.
Well, I mean, besides re-advertising, I mean, as far as the county's concerned, and
5 acres is a building lot, typically. You don't see many people foresting or farming 5 acres of land. And I'm just gonna,
Okay.
what I see is you don't want that threshold so low that a developer of subdivisions, of residential subdivisions uses that exemption as a loophole. That's why you have some sort of standard in there. What that acreage is up to you all.
Well, but somebody subdivided it, each lot would be, have to be perked, I'd assume. Right?
Not if you put a 5 acre standard in, then I can't require them to perk anything. Today they do. Today everything gets perked.
Well, I don't quite understand that. It looks like to me, if he's gonna put each lot a different deeded lot, they'd have to live up to the standards of perking.
If you put an exemption at 5 acres, anything 5 acres or more would not have to. That's if you were saying, you said 4. I was just going on what you stated, sir. Right now, everything gets perked. And under this current ordinance amendment being considered, 25 or more would not have to be if it's being put into ag production.
So Rob, you're saying that if it's a 100-acre subdivision, they don't have to perk every lot with that then?
restate that, please, sir.
All right, are you saying if we, tied at 25,
Mhm.
any subdivision with 25 acres, the lots would have to be perked?
Anything above that has to get perked. It doesn't have to get perked. Anything below 25 does not.
25 acres wouldn't have to be perked.
That's correct. That's what this is doing. It's
For the
removed,
subdivision over 25 acres, none of the lots have to be perked.
if all lots were 25 acres or more, and they were going into agriforestry use,
Right.
that's the key. They would not have to be perked.
Does agriforestry have to be stated in the deed?
Yes, it has to be, on the plat, it's not a residential lot unless it's perked, and then that statement goes in the deed as well.
Is there any more discussion or questions, comments? So what we need to decide now is if we're gonna vote, for the approval of the ordinance amendment, is 25 acres. If we want to change that, it's like you said, we'll have to do like we did last time, we'll have to re-advertise it and vote on it next time. So that's, I think, the question, when you want to make 25 or 5 or 4.
So surrounding counties, Rob, what are, I think are more 50 acres exemption?
The majority are 50 acres.
So 25 is not unreasonable.
25 is more lenient.
Yeah, it is.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Yes, sir, Mr. Yates.
None of this ever come about until Mr. Rob took his seat, and I criticized Mr. Rob, but we had never had to do this in the past. So if we're just not looking at the books, or what were we not doing?
I can't speak on anyone prior to my time who was the subdivision administrator, and I wouldn't speak for them. I can tell you, no laws were changed since I became subdivision administrator. I'm going by what's on the books of Prince Edward County.
Well, down there, just using a little more common sense, I guess. That's it.
Well, I think they're trying to clean up some of the zoning ordinances and clarify some things. And like I said, I now offered an exemption, which before we didn't have.
That's correct.
So, any other comments or questions? Okay, do I hear a motion one way or the other? Do we, a motion for the 25 acres, or if we do the 4 or 5 acres, like I said, we have to re-advertise it and vote again next meeting, which is fine. So what's the board's feeling, or do I hear a motion one way or the other from anybody?
I make a motion that we approve the 25 acres.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Mr. Jones, Bobby?
I'll say aye.
Ah, okay. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
To all in attendance, this matter will be taken up with the board at their next meeting. There will be another public hearing at that time.
We just recommend to the board, so the Board of Supervisors makes the final decision on that. So, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Okay, is there any old business?
Yes, actually, do have an old business item I wanted to advise you on. The last year, after your February meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved at the March 9th meeting, the shooting range for Hampton-Sydney College over on Farmville Road. And per your conditions, we're going to be doing a review of that site, because that was one of the conditions that the site would be revisited. So I'm gonna be setting up a time and, doing a review of that site, hopefully seeing, a session, in action. We've had one complaint from the Worthy family, most recently on that, and Hampton Sydney addressed that, with a comment letter, and currently they do not have any violations. They were not found to be in violation, at that time, but I did want to note that it has been a year since that site was approved, and I'll be coming back to you all with a, updated report with, findings on how that site's going.
Okay. No complaints about the noise, or?
The Worthies complained about the location of the shooting
Right.
range, and a couple of items, and the folks that were shooting. Hampton City, they thought that folks other than the students were shooting, but Hampton Sydney came back and gave us a response letter. They were staff and students only on the site, but they didn't complain about the noise, just the general location of where the the range was set up.
Right.
But I'm gonna go out there and take a look at that, and
Okay.
also give you a year-end wrap-up review on that.
Okay.
You want to move forward on the new?
Sure, yeah.
Under new business, I want to advise you at your next meeting, April meeting, I will be advertising, another community solar project. This is a 20 acre tract, of panels that will be coming before you, that was filed, by applicant. So we'll be bringing that to you. And that's really all I have. Did want to advise you all that, planning and building code, have moved across the hall, to the old Commonwealth Attorney Wing on this floor. You're welcome to come by and take a look at our new facilities and what our maintenance staff has fixed up. They did painting, but we are all collectively in an office suite, building code and myself and the building clerk. So when folks come now, they have a place to fill out a permit, submit plans, and it's focused on permit and planning.
Right. I did skip over review of supervisors' actions. Is there anything?
We didn't have anything because the last meeting, we had tabled this matter.
Okay,
So this will come
okay.
before them.
Okay.
We didn't have any action to report.
Anything?
Question, Rob, where is that solar farm, located in the county?
It's not far from from Pamplin, near the other 20 acre tract, off of, Thomas Jefferson Highway.
Okay.
It's even more secluded than the other site that y'all had looked at that is approved. Do you remember there was a site that was approved by the board that died? It was and don't quote, I can't remember the lady's name, but you had one site under your old ordinance that failed. In fact, they did not move forward with it.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
This is on that same tract of land. It's under a new applicant and a new solar company.
Yep, just curious, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this will kind of replace that site if it's approved.
Right.
Robert, I got one question. I've been asked too by several people, what's going on down here on 460 with all this land being cleared? I don't know what to tell anybody.
That site it's been approved. That site was rezoned by the county to C1 commercial for Tim Tharp. Tim, that's a soil storage site and a truck site. So that'll be an extension of Tharp Trucking eventually. But he has got a full stormwater plan. We are actively inspecting that. In fact, DEQ came down. That was one of the sites they did as their year-end review. And that site is in compliance. But it's going to be a big gravel lot where he's going to park his trucks and also stockpile soil and rock and roadway construction debris.
I remember all that. Below that, on down the road, it's just looks like 2 miles down through there. All of it's been cut over.
I don't know about the cutover. All I can tell you is his site is the only site we've got approved with the commercial zoning. There has been some timbering over that way.
It goes way down the road. I don't know how far, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jack is saying about a different thing that starts.
oh yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
You're talking about the logging across the cemetery that,
Yeah.
goes down and probably almost bumps up with Tim's.
I don't have any open applications on that.
I
That's,
knew we didn't have anything on it.
no, that's a timber operation.
Right, right. Originally, Tim was, authorized, that's where he was gonna put his truck site until he bought the one he's at now.
That's correct.
Yeah, so.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Stanley, you have anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next meeting is April 18th, remember, different date, on Monday, right?
On a Monday.
On a Monday, at 7 o'clock. Appreciate everyone coming tonight, and officially adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Byron.